Nikolai Volkov had always believed that understanding life meant studying it in its purest form, while it was still breathing. The research station's sterile walls felt suffocating compared to the wild beauty of the alien world outside, where the triple moons of Celestes cast their ethereal light across the crystalline forests. He adjusted his environmental suit settings, watching the readouts flicker across his heads-up display. The atmosphere was technically breathable, but protocol demanded full protection during initial surveys. His fingers traced the worn grip of his plasma rifle, a habit born from years of fieldwork on hostile worlds. Dr. Volkov, your presence is requested in the observation deck. The AI's voice carried a hint of urgency that made Nikolai pause his equipment check. When he arrived, he found himself face-to-face with one of the most striking beings he'd ever encountered. The Celestial stood nearly 7 feet tall, her skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that shifted like starlight on water. Her silver eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him straighten instinctively. "I am Scout Commander Shira Thalon," she announced, her translator converting her melodic language into crisp English. "Your reputation precedes you, Dr. Volkov, though I must admit I expected someone more imposing." Nikolai smiled, used to such reactions. At 5'10" with a lean build, he hardly matched the stereotype of a rugged xenobiologist. "The best hunters on Earth were rarely the largest, Commander. We survived through adaptation and intelligence." "So I've heard." Shira activated a holographic display showing a massive creature that made Nikolai's breath catch. "Perhaps you can explain why one of your research teams was found here." She pointed to a location deep in the crystal forest, attempting to trap a void stalker. The creature in the hologram was beautiful in the way apex predators often were, all sleek lines and deadly efficiency. Its obsidian scales seemed to absorb light, while bioluminescent markings similar to the Celestial's own pulsed along its flanks. The comparison wasn't lost on Nikolai. "My team was conducting behavioral studies," he explained, studying the hologram intently. "The Void Stalkers share remarkable similarities with Earth's ancient predators, but their hunting patterns suggest a level of intelligence we've never encountered before." "They are death incarnate," Shira's voice carried an edge of fear that intrigued Nikolai. "Our strongest warriors avoid them. Your team's actions were foolish and nearly cost them their lives." "Nearly," Nikolai emphasized. "But they survived, didn't they? And I bet the data they collected was invaluable." Before Shira could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. The holographic display shifted, showing multiple red dots converging on their location. Nikolai recognized the pattern immediately. "They're hunting in formation," he breathed, excitement mixing with apprehension, "just like pack hunters from Earth." "Impossible," Shira whispered. "Void stalkers are solitary predators, they never." The station shuddered as something massive struck its outer walls. Emergency lights bathed the observation deck in crimson as backup systems engaged. Nikolai was already moving, checking his weapon and accessing the station's external cameras through his tablet. There, he pointed to the screen, showing 3 Void Stalkers coordinating their assault on the station's weakest points. "They're learning, adapting, fascinating." "This is hardly the time for scientific observation," Shira snapped, drawing her own weapon, an elegant energy rifle that hummed with power. "We need to evacuate." "No," Nikolai countered, his eyes never leaving the screen. "This is exactly what I've been waiting for. Commander, your people have been running from these creatures for generations. Let me show you another way." Their eyes met, silver against steel gray, a moment of understanding passing between them. Shira saw something in his expression that made her pause, not reckless bravado, but calculated determination. "What are you proposing?" "You know these forests better than anyone. I know predator behavior. Together, we might not just survive this, we could learn from it." He offered his hand, a very human gesture that seemed to surprise her. "Partners." The station groaned as another impact threatened its structural integrity. Shira looked at his offered hand, then back at his face. "If we die, I will personally ensure your spirit never finds peace." Nikolai grinned, fair enough. The next hours were a dance of shadow and strategy. They moved through the crystal forest like ghosts, Shira's intimate knowledge of the terrain complementing Nikolai's understanding of predator psychology. He noticed how the Void Stalkers communicated through pulses of bioluminescence, similar to Shira's own markings. "They're mimicking you," he whispered as they watched the creatures from a concealed position. "They've evolved to hunt their most intelligent prey, your people." Shira's expression was complex fear mixing with fascination. How does this help us? Every predator has patterns, weaknesses. Nikolai checked his weapon's charge. They're intelligent, but they're still bound by instinct. Watch their flanks, the bioluminescent patterns betray their next move. As if to prove his point, one of the Void Stalkers signaled to its packmates, the lights along its body flashing in a distinct sequence. Seconds later, they moved to surround their position. Now, Nikolai whispered, we show them what happens when prey learns to hunt back. What followed was a lethal game of cat and mouse through the crystal forest. Nikolai and Shira used the creature's own tactics against them, separating the pack and leading individual Void Stalkers into carefully planned ambush points. The creatures were incredibly strong and fast, but they weren't prepared for prey that understood their hunting patterns. The final confrontation came as the triple moons reached their apex. The pack leader, larger than its companions, cornered them near a crystalline cliff face. Its scales rippled with patterns of challenge and dominance. It's beautiful, Nikolai breathed, earning an incredulous look from Shira. You truly are mad, she said, but there was admiration in her voice. The Void Stalker charged, its massive form moving with impossible grace. Nikolai and Shira acted as one, their weapons' fire coordinated with practiced precision. The creature fell, its bioluminescent markings fading like dying stars. In the aftermath, as they stood over the fallen ApexPredator, Shira watched in astonishment as Nikolai drew a sample collection kit from his suit. What are you doing? Learning, he replied simply. Every part of this creature tells a story about its evolution, its adaptation to this world, its interaction with your people. Knowledge is how humans became Earth's apex predators. It's how we'll help your people deal with these magnificent beings. Shira was quiet for a long moment, watching him work with methodical precision. The council will want to speak with you about this new approach. Good, Nikolai smiled, his eyes alight with possibility. Because I have a feeling this is just the beginning of a beautiful partnership. As they made their way back to the station, Nikolai couldn't help but notice how Shira's bioluminescent patterns had shifted, matching the rhythm of his heartbeat. In the depths of the crystal forest, something new had awakened, an understanding between predator and prey, hunter and hunted, human and celestial. The hunt had only just begun. The crystalline training grounds of the Celestial Defense Academy sparkled under the morning light, as Nikolai demonstrated the proper way to read a Void Stalker's movement patterns. 24 celestial warriors watched with rapt attention as he manipulated a holographic projection of the creature. Notice the surge of bioluminescence along the dorsal ridge, he explained, pointing to the pulsing lights. It's not just beautiful, it's a tell. 3 rapid pulses followed by a fade means they're about to strike from the left. 2 slow pulses, they're going right. From her position at the back of the group, Shira watched with poorly concealed amusement as her warriors struggled to reconcile their ingrained fear with this new approach. 3 months had passed since their first hunt together, and in that time, Nikolai had transformed from an oddity into something of a legend among her people. Theoretical knowledge is good, Nikolai continued, deactivating the hologram, but nothing beats practical experience, Commander Thalon. Shira stepped forward, her own bioluminescent patterns shifting in a way that Nikolai had learned meant she was excited. Today's exercise will take place in the Eastern Crystal Forest. You will be divided into pairs, 1 tracker, 1 hunter. Your objective is to locate, study, and evade a Void Stalker for no less than 2 hours. A murmur of anxiety rippled through the warriors. One of them, a young scout named Curran, raised his hand. Evade, not engage. You can't effectively hunt what you don't understand, Nikolai replied, checking his equipment. First, you learn to survive, then you learn to observe, only then can you learn to hunt. As the warriors prepared their gear, Shira moved closer to Nikolai. They're nervous, she observed quietly. Good, he smiled, adjusting his environmental suit settings. Nervous means alert, alert means alive. They set out as the triple moons began their slow dance across the sky. The Eastern Crystal Forest was particularly treacherous. Its dense crystalline formations created a maze of reflections and shadows perfect for ambush predators. Nikolai and Shira took point, leading their students deeper into the territory they now knew intimately. Stop, Nikolai commanded suddenly, raising his fist. The group froze as one, their training taking over. He knelt, examining something on the crystal-strewn ground. Fresh marks, see how the crystals are scratched? Void Stalker, full grown, passed through here no more than 20 minutes ago. The warriors crowded around, studying the signs with newfound interest. Shira noticed how they mimicked Nikolai's posture, his way of reading the terrain. It was fascinating how quickly they were adapting to his methods. Pairs 1 through 6 take the northern quadrant, Shira ordered. 7 through 12 south, remember your training, observe, record, evade, emergency beacons only if absolutely necessary. As the warriors dispersed, Nikolai and Shira began their own patrol. They moved in perfect sync, months of hunting together having forged an almost telepathic connection. She no longer needed to speak to know his intentions. The slight shift of his weight or the tilt of his head told her everything. Your warriors are learning quickly, Nikolai observed as they navigated a particularly dense crystal formation. Especially Curran, he has good instincts. He reminds me of you, Shira replied, her silver eyes scanning the terrain, too curious for his own good. Curiosity kept our species alive, Nikolai countered, though his tone was playful. That and our irresistible charm. Shira's bioluminescent patterns flickered in what Nikolai had come to recognize as laughter. Is that what you call it? And here I thought it was your complete disregard for self-preservation. Their banter was interrupted by a distant cry, not of fear but of excitement. They changed direction immediately, moving toward the sound with practiced efficiency. They found Curran and his partner, Lyra, crouched behind a crystal formation, their recording devices active. Look, Curran whispered, pointing to a clearing ahead. In the crystalline glade, two juvenile void stalkers were engaged in what appeared to be play behavior. They chased each other through the crystal formations, their bioluminescent patterns creating a mesmerizing light show. Fascinating, Nikolai breathed, already taking notes. This confirms my theory about their social structure. They're not just pack hunters, they have complex family units. Like us, Lyra observed, her voice soft with wonder. The moment was shattered by a bone-shaking roar. The adult void stalker emerged from the shadows like a living piece of darkness, its massive form making the juveniles look like toys in comparison. Its bioluminescent patterns pulsed with warning signals. Nobody move, Nikolai commanded, his voice barely a whisper. It's not hunting, it's protecting its young. If we don't threaten them, it won't attack. They watched in tense silence as the adult void stalker herded its offspring away from their position. The display of parental behavior was unprecedented, adding another layer to their understanding of these magnificent predators. You see, Nikolai said once the creatures had disappeared into the forest. They're not mindless killers. They're intelligent, social beings with complex behaviors. Understanding this is key to learning how to coexist with them. As they regrouped with the other warriors, sharing observations and experiences, Shira found herself watching Nikolai with new eyes. His passion for understanding these creatures, his ability to see beauty in what her people had always feared, was changing more than just their hunting techniques. Later that night, as they reviewed the day's recordings in the command center, Shira finally voiced what had been on her mind. You're changing everything we thought we knew about them, about ourselves. Nikolai looked up from his data pad, his gray eyes meeting her silver ones. Change isn't always a bad thing, Commander. No, she agreed, her patterns shifting to display emotions she wasn't ready to voice. It isn't. The air between them crackled with unspoken possibilities. Before either could break the moment, an urgent alert flashed across their screens. Multiple void stalker packs were converging on the outer settlements, displaying unprecedented coordinated behavior. Well, Nikolai said, already checking his gear, looks like class isn't over yet. Shira's patterns pulsed with anticipation. Think of it as a practical exam. As they prepared for the upcoming challenge, both knew that their partnership had evolved into something neither had expected. The dance between predator and prey, hunter and hunted, human and celestial, was taking on new forms, leading them down paths neither could have anticipated. The crystal forests of Celestes held many secrets, and they were just beginning to uncover them all. The outpost of Haven's Edge clung to the cliffsides like a crystalline lighthouse, its defensive barriers glowing softly against the perpetual twilight of Celestes' northern reaches. Inside the command center, Nikolai Volkov studied the holographic display with growing concern. The pattern recognition algorithms don't lie, he explained to the gathered council of celestial leaders. The Void Stalkers aren't just learning, they're evolving at an accelerated rate. Look at these neural complexity readings from specimens taken just 3 months apart. Shira stepped forward, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with urgency as she gestured to specific data points. The hunting formations we observed last week show tactical thinking we've never seen before. They're not just coordinating their attacks, they're planning them. Elder Thorin, his ancient face lined with concern, leaned forward. How is this possible? Such rapid evolution defies natural law. Not necessarily, Nikolai countered, pulling up new data streams. Earth's history is full of examples of punctuated equilibrium periods of rapid evolutionary change triggered by environmental pressures. The question is, what's causing this pressure? Before anyone could respond, the outpost's alarms blazed to life. Curran burst into the chamber, his patterns flashing with distress. Commander Thalon, Dr. Volkov, you need to see this. The observation deck offered a panoramic view of the crystalline valley below. What they saw made even Nikolai's breath catch. A pack of void stalkers moved through the crystal formations, but these were different from any they'd encountered before. Their scales had developed new patterns, almost geometric in their complexity, and their movements showed an eerie precision. Count 15, Shira murmured, her hand unconsciously finding Nikolai's arm. Number 16, there's one moving independently of the main group. Nikolai's eyes narrowed as he tracked the lone stalker. They're using scouts, actual reconnaissance. This isn't just learned behavior, their brains are physically adapting to support more complex hunting strategies. A young warrior named Lyra, who had distinguished herself in recent training sessions, spoke up. The crystal formations, they're using them differently. Watch how they position themselves to maximize the reflections. She was right. The Void Stalkers were deliberately using the crystalline environment to distort their own bioluminescent signals, creating false readings that would confuse prey or hunters. Clever girls, Nikolai whispered, an ancient Earth reference that only he understood. They're not just adapting to hunt us, they're adapting to counter our hunting techniques. The implications sent a chill through the observation deck. Everything they'd learned, everything they'd taught others about fighting these creatures might soon become obsolete. We need to evacuate the outpost, Elder Thorin declared, if these creatures have evolved to counter our defenses. No, Nikolai and Shira spoke simultaneously. They shared a quick glance before Nikolai continued. Running now would be a mistake. This is an opportunity to study their evolution in real time, to understand how they think and adapt. And perhaps, Shira added, her patterns shifting thoughtfully, to evolve our own strategies in response. The next 48 hours became a desperate race against time. While the outpost's defenders prepared for the inevitable assault, Nikolai and Shira worked tirelessly to analyze the new Void Stalker behaviors. They set up sophisticated sensor arrays throughout the valley, gathering data on every movement, every pattern shift. Look at this, Nikolai called out during their second sleepless night. The holographic display showed a complex web of bioluminescent signals between pack members. They're developing a new language. The complexity of their communication is increasing exponentially. Shira leaned close, her own patterns unconsciously synchronizing with the recorded signals. These patterns, they're similar to our own ancient battle languages. How could they have learned it? They didn't learn it, Nikolai realized, excitement mixing with apprehension. They independently evolved a similar system because it works, convergent evolution at its finest. A distant explosion rocked the outpost. The Void Stalkers had begun their assault sooner than expected, targeting the power generators with frightening precision. All defenders to positions, Shira's voice rang out over the comm system. Remember your training, they may be evolving, but so are we. The battle that followed would be remembered in celestial chronicles for generations. The Void Stalkers attacked with unprecedented coordination, using tactics that seemed impossible for non-sentient beings. But the defenders, trained in Nikolai's methods and led by Shira's tactical brilliance, held their ground. Curran and Lyra proved especially valuable, their young minds adapting quickly to the new threat patterns. They organized the defensive teams based on the Void Stalkers' own pack dynamics, creating a mirror image of their hunting formations. In the thick of battle, Nikolai found himself back-to-back with Shira, their movements synchronized as they faced down 3 evolved stalkers. "Remember our first hunt?" he called out, his plasma rifle picking off a creature attempting to flank them. "You were just as crazy then," Shira replied, her own weapon singing. Her patterns pulsed with a mix of exertion and something deeper, more personal. "Though perhaps I've grown fonder of your particular brand of madness." The tide turned when Nikolai noticed something crucial about the evolved stalker's behavior. They're not just coordinating, they're protecting specific individuals. Look, the ones with the more complex patterns are being kept away from direct combat. Their leaders, Shira realized, or perhaps their evolution engines, the ones driving the changes in their species. With this insight, they adjusted their strategy, targeting these key individuals with precise strikes. The effect was immediate without their evolutionary leaders. The remaining void stalkers fell into more predictable patterns. By the time the triple moons reached their zenith, the battle was over. The outpost stood, damaged but unbroken, and the defenders had achieved something unprecedented, a decisive victory against an evolved void stalker pack. In the aftermath, as they treated their wounded and secured their perimeter, Nikolai and Shira stood on the observation deck, watching the crystalline valley below. The bodies of fallen void stalkers glittered like black diamonds in the moonlight. "We'll need to change everything," Shira said softly. "Our training, our tactics, our entire understanding of them." "That's the beautiful thing about evolution," Nikolai replied, his hand finding hers. "It never stops. We adapt, they adapt, and the dance continues." Her patterns shifted in response to his touch, creating harmonies of light that reflected off the crystal walls. "And us? How are we evolving, Nikolai?" Before he could respond, Curran's voice crackled over the comm system. "Dr. Volkov, Commander Thalin, we've found something in the neural scans of the fallen stalkers, something impossible." They shared a look that spoke volumes. Their own evolution, personal, professional, emotional, would have to wait. The dance between predator and prey had entered a new movement, and they needed to keep up with the tempo. The celestial capital of Luminara was under siege. The crystal spires that had stood for millennia now shimmered with warning lights as thousands of citizens rushed to emergency shelters. From the central command center, Nikolai Volkov watched the tactical displays with growing concern. "The neural scans weren't wrong," he said, pointing to the massive heat signatures approaching from all directions. "They've developed a hive mind. Every void stalker within 1,000 miles is responding to some kind of coordinated call." Shira's patterns pulsed with barely contained tension as she coordinated the city's defenses. The outer barriers won't hold against these numbers, not with their new tactics. The scans from Haven's Edge had revealed something unprecedented. The void stalkers had developed specialized neural networks that allowed them to share consciousness across vast distances. They weren't just pack hunters anymore, they had become a collective intelligence. Curran burst into the command center, his armor bearing fresh scratches. "The eastern quarter is secured, but we're seeing new behavior patterns. They're using our own crystalline technology against us, somehow interfacing with the city's defense systems." "Of course they are," Nikolai muttered, rapidly adjusting his theoretical models. "The crystalline structures in their brains, they're not just for communication, they're literal organic computers." Lyra, now serving as chief of tactical operations, brought up a new holographic overlay. "Look at these energy readings. The crystals in their scales aren't just for show anymore. They're storing and channeling power just like our city's systems." A massive explosion rocked the command center. Through the panoramic windows, they watched in horror as a section of the outer barrier dissolved, its crystalline matrix disrupted by synchronized energy pulses from dozens of void stalkers. "They're not just evolving anymore," Shira realized, her patterns shifting to deep crimson. "They're transcending their biological limitations, becoming something new." "All defenders to critical positions." Nikolai's voice carried the weight of command earned through countless battles. "Focus fire on their synaptic nodes, the crystalline formations along their spines, disrupt their network." The battle for Luminara became a desperate fight for survival. The void stalkers moved with terrifying coordination, each beast acting as part of a greater whole. Traditional defenses proved useless against their evolved capabilities. In the thick of combat, Nikolai and Shira found themselves defending the city's central power core. The massive crystal matrix hummed with energy, its resonance matching the frequencies emitted by the attacking creatures. "The frequency match isn't coincidental," Nikolai shouted over the chaos. "They're trying to synchronize with our technology to absorb our own evolution." Shira's weapon sang as she picked off another stalker. "Can we use that against them, turn their own evolution into a weapon?" Before Nikolai could respond, a massive form crashed through the reinforced walls. The void stalker that emerged was unlike anything they'd ever seen, Its scales had transformed into living crystal, pulsing with internal energy that matched the city's power signatures. "Well," Nikolai said, readying his weapon, "I think we just found the next stage of their evolution." The battle that followed would be remembered in legend. Human ingenuity and celestial grace fought as one against nature's perfect predator. But even as they fought, Nikolai's scientific mind was racing, seeing patterns within patterns. "The resonance," he called out to Shira as they dodged a crystalline energy blast. "It's not just about power, it's about consciousness. They're trying to merge with our technology to understand us at the deepest level." Shira's patterns flickered with sudden understanding. Not just understand, communicate. The realization hit them both at once. The Void Stalker's evolution wasn't just about becoming better predators. It was about bridging the gap between species, about achieving a form of communion with their prey. As the battle for Luminara reached its crescendo, Nikolai and Shira made a decision that would change both their civilizations forever. The question was whether anyone would survive to see the outcome. The central power core of Luminara pulsed with blinding light as Nikolai Volkov made the riskiest decision of his life. His hands flew over the crystal controls, recalibrating the city's resonance frequencies to match those of the evolved Void Stalkers. "This is insane," Curran protested, helping Lyra maintain the defensive perimeter. "If you're wrong." "Then we're dead anyway," Shira finished, her patterns synchronizing with the core's pulsing rhythm. "But he's not wrong, I can feel it." The crystalline Void Stalker that had breached their defenses stood motionless, its own frequencies shifting to match the changing resonance. Around the city, hundreds of its kind did the same, creating a symphony of synchronized energy that made the very air vibrate. "They're not trying to destroy the city," Nikolai explained, making final adjustments. "They're trying to join with it, to merge their consciousness with our technology, our understanding." "Because we forced them to evolve," Shira realized. "Our hunting techniques, our defenses, we push them to transcend their physical limitations." The power core's frequency reached its peak, creating a crystalline note that seemed to pierce reality itself. The Void Stalker's eyes locked with Nikolai's, and in that moment understanding flowed both ways. Images flooded his mind. The creature's ancient history, their gradual awakening to consciousness, their desperate race to evolve fast enough to survive in a world where they were no longer the dominant species. He saw their fear, their curiosity, their determination to bridge the gap between predator and prey. Shira gasped beside him, her patterns cascading with shared insight. Through their neural network, the Void Stalkers were showing them everything, their society, their hopes, their potential future. "They want to cooperate," she whispered, "to combine their evolutionary achievements with our technology." The crystalline Void Stalker moved forward, its movements now graceful rather than threatening. Its scales resonated with patterns that mimicked celestial speech, growing more refined with each moment of connection. "Understanding, achieved," it communicated, the words forming directly in their minds. "Evolution, complete." Around the city, other Void Stalkers were changing, their forms settling into a new configuration that balanced predatory power with crystalline sophistication. They were becoming something entirely new, a bridge between natural evolution and technological advancement. Lyra lowered her weapon, her eyes wide with wonder. "They're beautiful." "They always were," Nikolai replied, remembering his first encounter with these magnificent creatures. "We just needed to learn how to see it." In the days that followed, the transformation of both societies began. The Void Stalkers, now capable of direct communication through their crystalline networks, shared their evolutionary insights. In return, the Celestials and their human allies helped them refine their new abilities, creating a symbiotic relationship that would have seemed impossible months ago. Nikolai and Shira stood on a balcony overlooking the city, watching as a group of young Celestials worked alongside juvenile Void Stalkers, their patterns synchronizing in a dance of mutual learning. "When I first found you eating one of them," Shira mused, her patterns reflecting moonlight, "I thought you were either mad or suicidal." "And now," Nikolai asked, taking her hand. "Now I think you saw something the rest of us couldn't, that understanding comes in many forms, and evolution isn't just about survival." A crystalline Void Stalker soared past their balcony, its scales shimmering with patterns that matched Shira's own. The creature had once been their greatest predator. Now it was their greatest teacher. What happens next? Shira asked, though her patterns suggested she already knew the answer. Nikolai smiled, pulling her close. We keep evolving together. Above them, the triple moons of Celestes cast their light across the transformed city, where predator and prey, human and celestial, technology and nature had found a way to transcend their limitations. The hunt that had begun with fear and survival had evolved into something far more profound, a symphony of life, continuing to adapt, to grow, to become more than the sum of its parts. In the crystal forests beyond the city, new forms of void stalkers were already emerging, their evolution now guided by understanding rather than necessity. And in the hearts of those who had witnessed this transformation, a new kind of hope took root, the hope that even the oldest of enemies could become the strongest of allies, given enough courage to evolve beyond their original nature. The dance of predator and prey had become a dance of partnership, and the music of that dance would echo through the crystal forests of Celestes for generations to come.